Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to stately Vaughan Manor, where Roger and I have returned to take care of business. We got some business to take care of this morning because, I've got a lot of stuff to talk about. Not much time to talk about it, and I probably won't have time to do another video until Monday. So let's talk about some stuff. I got some things that came in the mail. I've got to talk about BookTrek 2025. We've got a TBR for that and some other stuff. So let's talk about that stuff, Roger. Take care of business. First of all, I want to thank Willard M. Oliver for sending me a book. I got a book in the mail. So Willard M. Oliver wrote the biography I read recently of Robert E. Howard, which was great. It was a wonderful biography. And he had written another biography before the biography of Robert E. Howard, which is Robert E. Howard, The Life and Times of a Texas Author, which I highly recommend. But he also wrote this book. This is August Vollmer, The Father of American Policing. And I said in a video, if I ever get my hands on this book, I'll read it. And very kindly, Willard M. Oliver sent me a copy of the book, that was just really nice. I really appreciate that. So I want to thank Willard M. Oliver for sending me this biography of August Vollmer, the father of American policing, a very important figure in the history of American law enforcement. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, thank you, Mr. Oliver, for sending me your book. I will definitely read this because his Robert E. Howard book was fantastic. So I imagine this book is probably just as good. So yeah, there you go. I'm going to read that. Probably not until the end of the year, but I'm going to read it. And speaking of when the heck I'm going to read things, it's time to talk about Varney. So I started Varney a long time ago. So Varney is a penny dreadful that lasted a long time. A penny dreadful was a little pamphlet that would come out in Victorian England. The penny dreadfuls would come out every week or two or something. And they'd have a portion of a story about a main character or whatever. And in this case, Varney the Vampire was the most popular penny dreadful that I think there ever was. And I've always intended to read this book. And so I started it, but I've been reading other things along with Varney. And Varney has always gotten sidelined by the other things that I've been reading since I started it. Which was, I think it was last October or something. It was a while ago. So I'm thinking, I've got to finish Varney, but you know what? With the 500 book challenge and all the reading events going on, I'm trying to think, when am I actually going to be able to sit down and finish this? Because we've got, let me see here, we've got BookTrek 2025, which I'm going to be talking a little bit about today. We've got June on the Range coming up real soon. This month has been Horror Mayhem. Then we've got Rocket Summer, Garbogust, Sumerian September. So I guess I'm not going to be able to get back to this book, really, to just sit down and read it until October, which is a year after I started it. So I've got a big chunk of it left in the second half. And I figure the only way I'm going to finish it is if I just sit down and read the rest of it without reading any other books. So that's probably not going to happen till October. So those of you who are wondering what the heck happened to Varney the Vampire, and Varney himself, who frequently haunts the halls of stately Vaughan Manor, will not be happy. But realistically, I want to finish this book. I'm going to finish it. I just have to figure out, how I'm going to do it. And that's how I'm going to do it, I think. I just have to wait till all these reading events are over and then just sit down and read it, which is probably going to be October. So October is going to be the Varney month, where I finally finish Varney. Finally. So, those of you who were wondering, that's when I'm going to finish Varney. That's how I'm going to do it, I think. Okay, I got some other mail, Roger. And it was some mail from my friends over at the Shadowed Circle. So I got some Shadow stuff, which is really cool. The Shadow, one of my very favorite pulp characters. The Shadowed Circle is what we used to call a fanzine back in the day. It's a magazine devoted to this character, and it's available on Amazon if you want to pick up past issues of the Shadowed Circle. This is the Shadowed Circle number 6, and it has a bunch of articles and other things about the Shadow, and it's really, really cool. I love the Shadow, and so, this is, of course, going to be of great interest to me. So this is the Shadowed Circle number 6, and I also got the Shadowed Circle number 7. So yeah, these are really cool. But this isn't these two magazines, they're not the only things that they sent me. They sent me a couple other things as well. They also published these 2 books. One is Gangland's Doom, The Shadow of the Pulps. And this is is it the 50th? It's the 50th anniversary edition of this. Yeah. Gangland's Doom. And this is by Frank Eisgruber Jr. Has an introduction by Will Murray, who knows all about the pulps and loves the pulps and frequently writes books featuring pulp characters. And this was a history of the magazine version of the Shadow. The Shadow, of course, was also a radio character. And the radio character was cool, but not exactly the same thing as the pulp character. So this book is available, which should be really interesting. This should be really interesting. So Gangland's Doom, The Shadow of the Pulps, 50th anniversary edition, from our friends at the Shadowed Circle. And they also sent me the Shadowed Circle Compendium, the Shadowed Circle Compendium, which is really cool. So this is, I believe, a bunch of articles from the first few, it says right here on the back. It says on the back what it is. A selection of articles from the first few years of the Shadowed Circle Journal, plus exclusive articles unavailable anywhere else. So that's pretty cool. And yeah, it's a good-sized book, has cool illustrations in it with all kinds of stories and articles and stuff about the Shadow. And there's our pal Doc Savage. I love Doc Savage. He's in here too. So yeah, this is really cool. There's the DC comic book of the Shadow, which was wonderful. Looks like a Shadow action figure. Yeah, look at that. That's awesome. And this picture brings me up to another thing that I was going to mention, that, I was inspired by the Shadowed Circle arriving. Every month I've been reading a Doc Savage adventure, and I've been reading the Doc Savage pulp magazine stories as they were originally published in the pulp magazines. So every month I've been doing that. And I thought, I really need to get back to the Shadow as well, because I got a ton of Shadow novels as well. So I think along with Doc Savage every month, I'm going to be reading the Shadow. And I started doing this, last year? I don't remember when. And so now, along with Doc Savage every month, I'm going to be reading The Shadow every month. And so that should be double the fun. And, Doc Savage and The Shadow, those novels were published in the pulp magazine, so they're really short. So it's a doable thing. Unfortunately, unlike with Doc Savage, I do not have all of the Shadow novels. So I'm not going to be reading them in order as I am with Doc Savage. Doc Savage, I have every single Doc Savage adventure, but with the Shadow, I probably have 60%, somewhere around there. I do not have all of the Shadow novels, so I will be reading them, just unfortunately not in the order that they were originally published. I did read the very first Shadow adventure last year. I think it was last year. And I read number 2 in this paperback series, which was from Pyramid. And so I'm actually on book 3 in the Pyramid series. But I also have shadow novels that were published elsewhere. And so I'm going to do a video on my plans for reading The Shadow, but I'm just mentioning here that, yeah, I'm going to be reading more of The Shadow along with Dog Savage every month, and that'll be fun. So let's get to BookTrek. Let's finally get to BookTrek 2025, which is a fantastic event created by Vin over at Revenant Reads, where every year we'll spend the summer reading Star Trek fiction. I love Star Trek. Star Trek is my very favorite show. And right now, recently, I've been rewatching Star Trek The Next Generation, and I'm on season 6 of Star Trek The Next Generation. And I haven't rewatched that show since, I was watching it when they came out, basically. I've seen a few reruns here and there, but basically I haven't seen the whole of the series since it first aired. And that's been great. That's been great fun. And I've also started recently rewatching Deep Space Nine, because that started when The Next Generation was still on. And so I've been watching both Deep Space Nine and Star Trek The Next Generation recently. And so that's been fun, and it's a perfect lead into BookTrek, And I've got a bunch of stuff to read for BookTrek. A lot of it is comic books. But not all of it. Let's talk about the real books that I've got set to read. And the first one is this one, which is a Deep Space Nine book. This is Star Trek Deep Space Nine: The Siege, which is number 2 in the series, although it's the first original novel. The first book was an adaptation of the first episode. And this is by Peter David. And I picked this up because just a few days ago now, Peter David passed away. Peter David, who's probably best known for his run on The Incredible Hulk. He was the writer on The Incredible Hulk for, I think, a decade. He was writing the Hulk for a long, long time. And that is a very well-remembered run on The Incredible Hulk. He also wrote Aquaman, very popular and influential run on Aquaman. He also wrote Supergirl. And in fact, in a few months, I believe his run on Supergirl is going to be reprinted in the DC Finest series. He did a lot, Peter David, and it was very sad to hear that he passed away. He had a lot of health problems. And so, yeah, unfortunately, we lost him. But he wrote a lot of Star Trek books. And a lot, I remember, were pretty good. I've never read this one. And I think I've read one Deep Space Nine novel, which I read for BookTrek, and that was the adaptation of the first episode. So it'll be fun to read this one. So Star Trek Deep Space Nine: The Siege, in honor of Peter David. Also, Star Trek 3, I've got to throw in some James Blish. James Blish, who wrote the first Star Trek books. He wrote the adaptations of the episodes of the original series, and I read the first 2 of those fairly recently. When I say fairly recently, within the last year or two. And so I've got to get to book 3, and so it's BookTrek, so Star Trek 3 for BookTrek. Got to read that. And this one I find really interesting. So this is called World Without End. And this is a Star Trek novel. You would never know it from the cover. The only way you know it is because it says so at the top. But it's written by Joe Haldeman. And I just find the idea of a Star Trek novel written by Joe Haldeman so interesting. He wrote The Forever War, which was a great book, which I read earlier this year. And it's still one of the best books, if not the best book that I've read this year. I just wonder what he would do with a Star Trek novel. And so we're going to find out this BookTrek when I read World Without End. I have heard that it's not particularly good, but I'm just curious. I'm curious. We'll see. I've got a couple more if I get to them. Star Trek The Next Generation. Got to read a Star Trek The Next Generation novel. This is Grounded. The new novel is no longer new. The new novel by David Bischoff. Yeah. Infected by a dangerous alien life form, the U.S. Enterprise is scheduled for destruction. So this is the 25th book in the series? Yeah, it's the 25th book, which means it was probably around the third season when this one came out, which was a good season of Star Trek: The Next Generation. So we'll see. We'll see how this is. And if I get this far, another Star Trek, the original series novel, which is Corona. It's Corona. This is by Greg Bear. It's by Greg Bear, and it looks to take place in the Star Trek the Motion Picture era, before Star Trek The Wrath of Khan. And so we're going to see how Corona is. A Star Trek novel I've never read, which involves more Vulcans. So we'll see how that is. Star Trek Corona. I've got a ton of Star Trek books, and I just kind of picked this one up at random. We'll see if I get to it. I'm not reading any... what am I not reading? I'm not reading any Voyager or Enterprise books, just because I haven't gotten to those series in my rewatch of Star Trek yet. I probably will get to those next year. Enterprise I liked a lot. Star Trek Voyager was my least favorite of the original Star Trek series. But it had some good episodes, had some great episodes actually, but it also had some really terrible episodes, really bad. So it was kind of a mixed bag from what I remember Star Trek Voyager. And the new Star Trek is just all crap, right, Roger? It's all crap. I do have Star Trek comics to read too. I'm in the middle of Star Trek Year 5, which is a story that takes place. It's basically what could be the 5th season of the original series of Star Trek if it had like a huge budget. And it's been pretty cool. This is a really good series. And so I've got book 3, Weaker Than Man. There's Gary Seven, who is trying to kill Captain Kirk in this series. I still don't know why, because I'm only halfway through it, but he's trying to kill Captain Kirk. And then we've got the final volume of Star Trek Year 5, Experienced in Loss, which is a really cool cover. That's really awesome. So this will be the end of that. But I've also got a couple forgotten Star Trek comic book series. I've got the DC series that started after The Wrath of Khan and kind of continued on while they were making those Star Trek movies during the 1980s. Here, that's not the one I was looking for. This is the issue when Spock comes back after the search for Spock. And since they didn't know anything about Star Trek 4 when they were doing this comic books, Spock just came back and joined the crew, and he was fine. And then Star Trek 4 came out, and they were like, crap, what do we do now? We just did a bunch of issues that are impossible. So this will be a fun comic book to revisit. I'm definitely interested in, because I haven't read these since they came out, and I barely remember them. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle the whole continuity that happened during the films. And I also have the series of comics that came out from DC Comics when Star Trek: The Next Generation was being done. And this is the very first issue. So this came out during the 2nd season of Star Trek: The Next Generation. There's the much maligned Dr. Pulaski down there on the cover. So this came out during the 2nd season. Most of these issues, judging from their uniforms, came out during the 3rd and 4th season that I have. But I remember this series actually being pretty good. Written by Michael Jan Friedman with art by Pablo Marcos in these original issues. Yeah, they're pretty good. The covers are really good. So yeah, I'll be revisiting this series as well. So BookTrek 2025 is going to be fun. It's going to be fun. And I think that's all the business I have to take care of, Roger. I have to go and drink coffee and have breakfast and then go to work. So I'm going to do that. I probably won't see you until Monday, but I will see you then.